for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Vieira.
Here.
Goods.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
Dingfelder.
Here.
Dietrich.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
Maniscalco.
Here. Thank you very much. Mr. Shelby.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the Tampa City Council. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Today is Thursday, September 24th, 2020, and this 9 a.m. virtual workshop meeting is being held in accordance with the declarations and provisions of the Governor's Executive Order 20-69 and 20-193, as they may be further extended, and the emergency rules of procedure as adopted and amended by City Council. It's being conducted this morning by audio teleconferencing only with video presentations, which is remote participation referred to by the state of Florida statutes as communications media technology. This morning, the public and the citizens of Tampa are able to watch, listen, or view these meetings on cable TV and on the internet at tampagov.net/live stream and on the City of Tampa, Florida's Facebook. Council, since this meeting is being conducted with the use of communications technology, the following alternative methods had been established for members of the public to offer public comment during the meeting. The internet and the web, which was available for registration at tampagov.net/public comment, one word, no space, and by voicemail, by regular mail, and the opportunity to speak remotely for those people who don't have communications media technology, a laptop or a desktop or an iPad, let's say, and that is available for the public at the Tampa Convention Center. Please note, Council, that per your direction, the public comments pre-recorded and live will be heard at the start of the workshop, and that is different than what appears on the agenda, but that was by direction of Council. Written comments have been distributed to City Council and will be received and filed to be made part of the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shelby. Madam Clerk, we have, is it 11 speakers that have registered to speak live?
That is correct, sir.
And how many recorded messages do we have? Is it 3?
We have 3 recordings.
And is there anyone at the Tampa Convention Center?
At this time, there is no one at the Tampa Convention Center.
Okay, we'll begin with the registered live speakers. I will keep time with my timer. Each person has 3 minutes to speak. I ask that they please state their name when they begin speaking, and if there's any changes, I'll bring it up. So if you would like to begin with public comment, go ahead.
Yes, sir. The first speaker we have is Kelly Benjamin.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good morning. Just wanted to comment about the workshop on the Civilian Review Board. As you know, we've been, working on this issue for quite some time, brought up by Councilman Goods in order to restructure this board that was created over 5 years ago by Mayor Buckhorn to address some of the issues in our community surrounding trust, mutual respect, accountability, transparency. And, this is a, historic moment now in this country, dealing with issues of race and equality. And this is one avenue to, begin to address it and take that energy from the streets that we've seen throughout the summer nationwide and put it into concrete public policy to begin to heal some of the wounds that we've had in our own community that came about from issues like biking while black and some of the pattern of discriminatory policies that we've seen in the city of Tampa in regards to the way people are treated. And so I just I urge folks to remember that the spirit of this is to create trust and good government. and accountability. And this is not in any way, and shouldn't be, intended to be seen as a thorn in the side of law enforcement whatsoever, but an asset to our community and to empower our neighborhoods and our community to be able to have a say in the way that communities are policed. There is chairman representative from Nicole, the National Association of Law Enforcement Citizen Oversight Review Committees. I probably messed up that acronym, but on the line, as I have mentioned to you via text. And so if you could provide her perhaps with 5 minutes, and she's also available for comment after, or any questions or concerns that folks on the council have. But I thank you for the workshop. Look forward to the presentations and a robust discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is James Shaw.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Shaw, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is James Michael Shaw Jr. I'm a local attorney and I'm a Tampa citizen. And for the last 13 years, I have chaired the legal panel for the Greater Tampa chapter of the ACLU of Florida. I'd like to focus my comments this morning on the subject of subpoena power for the Citizens Review Board, because I think there are misunderstandings that maybe I can clear up today. First off, in case it isn't absolutely clear already, LEOBOR, the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, forbids city agencies from interrogating police officers facing discipline. That is not on the menu. Anyone who tells you that that's something that could happen if you give the CRB subpoena power is being paranoid or misinformed or both. That is not something that you have to worry about. But then we have heard the refrain, well, if the CRB can't do that, then what's the point of having subpoena power? And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. People have cameras on their doorbells now. Businesses have surveillance footage. There are very few places anymore where you can be outside that you are not on somebody's camera. And it is vital that the CRB should be able to obtain such footage. Without subpoena power, the people and the businesses who have such footage would have no obligation to share it with the CRB. And they could, in fact, be pressured not to, either by the police themselves or by misguided citizens who think that they're doing a service to law enforcement by shielding them from the sunlight. Even without such pressure, everybody knows that Ramsey Orta, the fellow who filmed the murder of Eric Garner, was subsequently hunted and trailed by vengeful Staten Island police officers waiting for him to do something wrong. And when they finally caught him doing something wrong, because you really can't have eyes on you at all times and never break any laws, he ended up serving 4 years in prison. And so whether TPD would really do something like that is not the question. All it would take is for the person holding the critical evidence to be unwilling to take that chance when there's no consequences to just holding on to the evidence. The same is true for providing testimony to the CRB. For the CRB to be able to conduct meaningful investigations, it needs to be able to obtain documents and footage and testimony, even if the Professional Standards Bureau did not obtain those documents and footage and testimony. And it can't do that without subpoena power. That's why it's so important. A CRB without subpoena power is a toothless tiger. In 2015 and even today, there was this refrain that you don't have the power to do that. Yes, you do. The refrain of, gosh, we wish we could help you, but we can't, is not going to fly in 2020 like it did in 2015. The public knows the difference between the lack of power and the lack of will. We circulated a memo detailing exactly why and how you do have that power, and I will stay on the line to answer any questions about that. I also want to point out that, as Kelly did, that you do have on the line Cameron McElhenney from the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement on the line. That's a national resource center for civilian oversight boards nationwide. She's graciously allowed to make herself available today during this workshop to answer your questions, and I hope that you'll take advantage of that. But 75% of major U.S. cities already have a CRB similar to what we are asking for. All we're asking to do is for Tampa to catch up with the rest of the country. What we're asking for is exactly what Miami has already. The sky has not fallen in Miami, and it will not fall in Tampa either if we catch up to the rest of the country on this issue. It is the right thing to do, and please do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Jamie Clapos.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Jamie Clapholtz. I'm an attorney and Tampa resident as well. And I'd like to focus on the importance of giving the Citizens Review Board an independent attorney that is not part of the city attorney's office. And the reason that that's so important is because having an independent attorney would allow the CRB to get unbiased advice regarding the extent of its powers and authority. And if it wanted to issue a subpoena, for example, that would be something that the independent attorney could advise on. And it's very important that that attorney have no other allegiances or conflicts of interest. Outside of subpoena power, if the CRB wanted to obtain public records or wanted to conduct an investigation or a review on a matter relating to the Tampa Police Department, it's crucially important that the CRB have an attorney that they can count on to provide unbiased advice about that without any competing interest from members of the administration who may not want to see a particular investigation or review go forward. Without, true independence, the CRB can't be effective in its role of ensuring that there's public trust and accountability with the Tampa Police Department. And it is my understanding that outside attorneys have been retained for other boards in the past on an hourly basis, so it wouldn't be a full-time staff member. It wouldn't be that much of a budget commitment. And it's my understanding that that could be done through a contract with the city that's approved by city council. And so we would be fine with that, so long as we're talking about an independent attorney who just does not have any conflicts of interest or competing interests with other members of the administration. And so we would hope that that's something that you will very seriously consider incorporating into the CRB ordinance. And I will stay on the line as well if you have any questions about the draft language that we submitted to you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Justin Coffey. If you could hear me, please unmute yourself.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Good. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Coffey, and the two previous speakers before me, James Shaw and Jamie Clampos, I believe is her name, I really feel said what was necessary in regard to having subpoena power and also making sure that the CRB has an independent attorney. I also think that this is absolutely necessary. And in addition to maintaining its independence, I think that we should also think about the appointments that are going to be made for the CRB. I think that if the city mayor is appointing more than 1/3 of its members, it definitely can lead to issues of conflict of interest. And I think that the board will be very susceptible to pressures from outside. So in regard to just maintaining its independence and making sure that this isn't a toothless tiger, I think it also needs to be considered, these appointments to the board. And with that, I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Cameron McElhaney.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today on the enhancement and strengthening of civilian oversight in the city of Tampa. My name is Cameron McElhaney, and I serve as the Director of Training and Education for the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, also known as NACOL. In the United States, NACOL is the preeminent civilian oversight association, and its board of directors, staff, and members are the leading experts in civilian oversight. Our membership is comprised of civilian oversight practitioners, volunteer board members, current and former law enforcement, community members, academics, and more. At its core, civilian oversight can be broadly defined as independent, external, and ongoing review of a law enforcement agency and its operations by individuals outside of the law enforcement agency being overseen. While the establishment of civilian oversight alone cannot restore law enforcement's legitimacy, it is difficult, if not impossible, to maintain public trust without it. As such, developing effective and adequately resourced civilian oversight is among the several strategies that must be employed to rebuild community relations with law enforcement. NACOL works to assist people to better understand civilian oversight, its principles, the benefits of its implementation, and effective practices. There are many benefits to establishing effective and sustainable civilian oversight for both the community and law enforcement, but I'd like to specifically focus on the internal and external benefits for law enforcement. Internally, it can enhance risk management systems or strategies, improve quality and integrity of investigations, improves agency performance, and increases transparency within the department. Externally, it can enhance credibility of the law enforcement agency with the public, encourages citizens to be proactive in reporting crimes in their community to a law enforcement agency that they can trust, improves perceived quality and integrity of the investigations, and creates a structured and constructive mechanism for the public to provide input into policing. NACL has recently completed research and a compilation of the principles of effective and meaningful oversight, as well as effective practices that a city should strongly consider when trying to implement meaningful oversight. Although there are 13 principles to consider, I'd like to highlight that they include independence, timely and unfettered access to records and facilities, adequate funding and operational resources, public reporting and transparency, community outreach, as well as community input, and procedural justice and legitimacy. I would like to also share just a few of the effective practices that we recommend. Access to information, disciplinary sanctions for failure to cooperate, subpoena authority, ongoing professional training, adequate staff to carry out the mandate of the agency, ability to conduct independent investigations, publishing and presenting regular data and reports, prohibitions against retaliation, and independent counsel. Although I've run out of time at this point, please know that I am available to provide additional information about oversight, its practices, and examples of cities that have successfully implemented these effective practices, and will stay on the line in case you would like to ask any additional questions. Thank you.
Do you need another minute or two?
No, but I can be available for more questions.
All right, thank you very much. All right, next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Matthew Yampolsky.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
go ahead. Yes, we can.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. Just to parrot what Mr. Shaw said, I'm here to request, so the majority of the appointments go to the mayor, which we all know. That's a big conflict of interest, obviously. This allows the mayor to control the composition of the Citizens Review Board. No one, especially a former police chief and member of the police force for 30 years, should not be able to appoint a majority, which she is currently able to do. As far as subpoena power, the CRB needs to be able to compel testimony and compel the production of documents so that it can conduct its own investigations. This would enable it to take testimony that the Professional Standards Bureau or Internal Affairs did not, review documents that it did not, etc. Right now, all it can do is review what the PSB did do, but it can't look into whether the PSB overlooked something. Right now, the Tampa Police Department sets the Citizens Review Board agenda. Now, that means that it can only look into what the Tampa Police Department wants it to look into. It needs to be able to set its own agenda. And even though the Police Bill of Rights would require complaints to be immediately sent to the PSB, it's still important that the members of the public have somewhere to take a complaint besides the Tampa Police Department itself. The Citizens Review Board should also have its own legal counsel to advise the Citizens Review Board what it can and can't do, to question witnesses and prepare subpoenas and so forth. So subpoena power is very important. Mr. Shaw nailed that on the head, that it's very important. It needs to set its own agenda and receive public complaints directly, and it needs its own lawyer. But just as importantly, Mayor Castor can't be the one in charge of appointing this review board. Now, I'd like to end my comment with saying, you guys ignored us for the last 4 months. You've listened to our public comments. You've heard our public comments for months, and you completely ignored them. And then you immediately following public comment last week, you guys took the opportunity to gaslight us and tell us that the protesters are just a nuisance. It's clear to me that the city council is just as useless and powerless currently as the Citizens Review Board. And it seems as though it's going to stay that way until 2023, when we can replace each and every one of you, because you guys are useless gaslighters. You guys don't care about the homeless. You guys don't care about Jonas Joseph. You guys don't care about anything. It's clear. So 2023, you guys are gone.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Jordana Yapolsky.
Okay.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm also here to just kind of mirror what everyone else is saying about the Citizens Review Board. We really need this to be something that gives the people of Tampa power to, or at least feel like they have some power over what's going on and be able to report problems from the police. You guys approved the $13 million increase. We're just going to keep hiring police officers. So can we please at least give the citizens some power in somewhere to go to complain about the things that they're doing, because they're still going to keep murdering people, they're still going to keep targeting people, and they're still going to keep trying to spread their power across everybody because they're afraid to lose it even more now. Again, the mayor cannot appoint more than a third of the Citizens Review Board. It would make it even more pointless than it already is in its current form. I don't have much to say to you guys. We're all very disappointed in the city at how you guys handled the last 4 months, and you're clearly not listening to us. I really hope we get a better new city council. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Chair, that concludes the live speakers. I do want to put on a record that we have 4 others that registered but did not log on. That's Siobhan Shoka, Gretchen Cothran, Peach King, and Anna Corse Travella. And we can move on to the recordings.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead. And you have 3, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Angel D'Angelo, and I live in Tampa, born and raised. I am calling today as you are discussing police accountability on the agenda. Long overdue. And as per course, this meeting is scheduled because of the hard work of the everyday people who have demanded it. This isn't something City Council woke up one day and benevolently said they wanted to do. So I just want to make sure that's cleared up before one of you takes claim for the work of the people you work for. The people you work for, by the way, is us, the citizenship of Tampa, and not Tampa Police Department or the, Tampa Union for the police. I noticed for many of you, you received donations from the police union, as well as some of you receiving them from Geo Group and Rocher, bail bonds, and other similar donors. So it seems like we have a city council that's really invested in the criminal justice system's ability to thrive, as well as all of your records of property management and development. So that explains why justice is so hard to achieve in this city. Follow the money, they say. But since you all weren't bold and courageous enough to work to reallocate funding to the community, like housing, healthcare, childcare, and a Tampa Jobs program that would actually improve this city and increase the amount of interaction with policing in the first place, I guess your step to pacify us as a citizen review board improvement that you're all working on, again, long overdue, should have just done this in the first place proactively. This isn't really going to do much to help Black, Brown, Indigenous, or other vulnerable communities. I mean, any mode of accountability that we can encourage, absolutely, we should do that. But it's going to be minimal due to the restrictions in the legal Bill of Rights. So, go ahead and do it. Feel good about it. Say you did something, but that's not going to be nearly enough. I hope they'll still push for the Cahoots program, ran completely separately from TPD. And then next year for the budget, let's actually do something that's useful to the people that will boost our economy and then reduce the need for violent policing in the first place. So do your little thing with the Citizen Review Board, wipe your hands at it, say you did something great, take the credit for it, has nothing to do with the people, and then, praise your. But we're going to continue going for what we know the city deserves, and the city deserves more than a department that just brutalizes Black, Brown, Indigenous, transgender communities and that does so when they don't even live in the city and aren't invested in the city. All right, I really appreciate you listening. Hopefully you're actually listening. Do your thing and have a great day.
My name is Madeline Winchuk. I live in New Tampa, zip code 33647. The Community Misconduct Board is our only hope, our only tool for keeping Tampa PD accountable and in line. Even a person responsible for bringing the misconduct board to Tampa even said the original one is designed to fail. In order to keep Tampa PD in line and accountable, when they continue to make abuses of power, hostility, violence towards the Black individuals and the Black community, and all people of color, and protesters, homeless people, poor people, the mentally ill within the community. We need change, and we need it immediately, because this is our only tool. So we demand, as a community, we demand that this board start to conduct diversified appointments, obtain its own lawyer, obtain subpoena power, and its ability to set its own agenda and receive complaints directly from the public. Thank you. I yield my time.
My name is Tom DeGeorge. My business address is 1812 North 17th Street. I am the owner of Crowbar in Ybor City. I am also the Florida Precinct Captain for the National Independent Venue Association, and I'm calling you about agenda item 1, which is Save Our Stages, and asking for support on the federal level for our small stages. There's about 2,800 of us in the country, a little bit over 100 in the state of Florida, 12 in Hillsborough County, and 5 of us right in Ybor City. And we are part of the ecosystem of the arts and the performing arts all around this area. In our small stages, for every dollar that is spent at places like ours, there's $12 spent in our community. So you have Crowbar, the Ritz Theater, the Orpheum, the Attic, and the Honey Pot are just a few that are right in Ybor City. And we also are the fuel for the festivals, things like Gasparilla Music Festival and our performing arts centers, Straz Center, Emily Arena, all these bands got their start in our small stages. So asking you to support Save Our Stages, but also look locally here and try to figure out a way, whether it be through county money, lobbying the state for more money, how we can get money to these small rooms so it doesn't hurt our communities and our larger arts, performing arts in general. Thank you for your time, and I'm always available to talk. You can hit me up at the Crowbar office line, 813-241-8600, and I'd love to meet or let anybody else know how important this is to Tampa Bay. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, I believe that concludes our recorded messages, but we do have a speaker by the first name of Gretchen that is logged in and was registered to speak. Is that correct?
That is correct. And
okay, she would like to begin.
Yep, Gretchen Cawthorn, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. I am Gretchen Cawthorn. I'm the president locally of the Greater Tampa Bay chapter of the ACLU of Florida. I am a volunteer attorney with the ACLU of Florida, and I'm also an attorney in private practice here in Tampa. I just want to point out that with this, what's going on in our community and the mistrust between citizens of the community and our government leadership, that it's very important that we have a CRB that is independent of the current government. And by that, I mean, you know, we all know that Mayor Castor is a former chief of police. And so by allowing her to have a dominant role on the CRB and appoint more members than the city council, it's giving the impression, and even if it's not the mayor's intention, it gives the impression that the police are still controlling the CRB, that the CRB is not an independent organization or an independent board that people can reach out to for assistance when they believe that they're being mistreated by the Tampa Police Department. So I feel that it's very important that the CRB establish itself independently from the mayor and the mayor not have control. This needs to be a board that people from the community trust that they can go to seek redress for complaints. As it is, we know that the board that was enacted in 2015 has no teeth. TPD controls the agenda. I know that Chief Dugan has been allowing the board to control its own agenda recently, but still, by decree, TPD and the mayor, who is the former chief of police, control what the board does. And even if they are doing their best to be unbiased in their roles, it still gives the impression to the community from people looking out at looking into the CRB that it is not an independent organization, that it's still being run by the police. And I don't think people trust that they can go to the CRB with problems. And I think I'm imploring city council to really focus on making the CRB transparent and make it completely independent from the mayor. And I do hope that the mayor will agree to allow city council to appoint more seats, more people to the board than the mayor appoints. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else that had logged in, Madam Clerk, that did not speak yet?
No, Chair, that concludes the public comments portion of the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. We will continue, or we will begin with the items on the agenda. Item number 1 is, I believe, Mr. Shelby will be presenting a resolution, and he'll explain. Go ahead, Mr. Shelby.
Actually, council, that has been distributed by Councilman Citro's office. Councilman Citro, if you're online, please, I turn this agenda item over to you. It was your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Shelby. Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. I believe all of you have received this resolution. If I may, Mr. Chair, just take a couple seconds to read off some statistics.
Yes, sir.
This is, as Mr. Tom DeGeorge mentioned earlier, this is a national crisis for small venue concert venues. And this is much bigger than the city of Tampa. However, we have some great venues here that are losing somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 a month just in overhead costs and expenses. Let me read off. The Ritz Theater down in Ybor City has a capacity of 1,500 people per show. They have had some really great shows there that I've seen. Boogie with a Hoodie and Coin. And as of March, we're now running at 570K lost. The Attic, which is in Ybor City also, they play different types of concerts, such as Cheap Trick and a poetry slam. So it's not only music. The Orpheum, which I've seen some really great shows at, Public Image Limited, and the Killers. Now, these venues aren't fitting in with CARES Act. And I've spoken with some of our fellow members down at the BOCC, and hopefully there's going to be some relaxation of some of the rules down there for monies received with CARES. But gentlemen, we have to support these small venue places. Let's remember that these are vital to our economy. The monies that are spent at these locations usually stay within the community much longer than the bigger venues for concerts. And gentlemen, please, let's also remember that great groups, classic groups now, REM, Blondie, The Police. They played here in Tampa in small venues back in the late 70s and early 80s. Without these small venues in the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, state of Florida, and the country, these bands may never have made it to the big concert arenas like Amalie and Raymond James. So I'm asking for support in this resolution, and we can unite in asking our senators here in the state of Florida and our federal government to please give assistance to these small concert venues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilman Citro. You mentioned the police, the band, not the discussion today, but yeah, one of my parents' first dates was to see the police, but it was at the Lakeland Civic Center, and that was sometime in the early 80s. And I didn't know that they had performed in Ybor, neither did I didn't know that Blondie was down here. But besides that, you know, I had a long conversation with Tom DeGeorge the other day, and you know, for anybody that has visited Ybor City, grew up in Ybor City, knew Ybor City years ago or today, I think of something that my friend Frank, who moved from Pittsburgh in 1985 to Tampa, said. He goes, when I came down to Tampa and I went to Ybor City in 1985, you could take a quarter and throw it down 7th Avenue in the middle of the day, and you could hear it clink when it hit the ground. And the reason I'm saying that is, you know, Ybor City has had its highs and lows. You know, we were the cigar capital of the world. Then we had World War II. Then we had interstate come through. Then we had urban renewal. We had all these things. But look at Ybor City from 40 years ago, 35 years ago, even 20 years ago until now, how completely different it is. And it's different because of people like Tom DeGeorge, people like Don Barco, people like the Gonsmark family, people like Joe Capitano and his family, and so many others that invested so much in Ybor City. And Ybor City is not just a Columbia restaurant and a couple of cigar shops. It's more than that. It's a destination place. A friend of mine was a manager at the Hyatt, now the Hilton downtown, years ago. And when people would visit, they would ask him, where's Burns Steakhouse? Where's the Columbia restaurant? Where's Ybor City? And of course, they would pronounce it many times Ybor City. But the fact is that people would come from all over the country and come to Tampa, and beyond the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Rowdies at the time and what we had, they knew in their head, you know, I got to go to Burns Steakhouse. I got to go to the Columbia. I got to get a Cuban sandwich somewhere. I have to visit Ybor City. Now, Ybor City as a historic significance, a historic, nationally registered historic landmark district is one thing. But as a music venue, and many of the things that you said and many of the places that you named, and of those places over the years, I did attend, you know, shows and concerts. And it's a, you know, because the venues are smaller than an arena size or a Straz size performance, you know, it's a more intimate experience. I remember one concert I went to about 17 years ago. It was floor seating only. It was just, you know, that was it. You walked in, there were no seats. It was a place called the Twilight, which is now, I believe, Honey Pot. And, you know, you were right there close to the band. You're right there in the middle of all this history. You're surrounded by these significant brick structures. But the point that I'm making is, and you said it, when people come to a live show, big or small, it can be a local band, it can be a national band, they go to restaurants, they go to the cigar shops, they reserve nights in our hotels. The fact is that they are not just buying a concert ticket, they're investing in our local economy and helping local business people. Nobody would have expected COVID-19 to hit as it did, to be as significant as it did, and as destructive as it has been. And you already stated several figures of different venues and the amount of revenue that has been lost and will continue to be lost as these individuals and these companies and businesses try to survive. The arts are very important, more important than I can express. And I'm not talking a couple of paintings or a couple of photographs, but art is spoken word, poetry, music, whatever it is. But the arts are what add to the flavor of the paella, okay, to quote Cesar Gonsmark, of what is Tampa. And the significance of Ybor City, and again, all the hard work and all the investment of so many people to make it so diverse and so welcoming to this community, recognize not only locally, but to all the people that visit here, we have to help. And I know that this is, some say, well, this is just a resolution, this is just a letter. But as a body that we come together and implore the powers that be, whomever it can be, if it's someone in the mayor's office or the county commission or the state level, to help these venues so that they can survive. We can't lose them. That's all I have to say. Are there any other council members that wish to speak on this item?
Vera, if I may.
Go ahead,
sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, just wanted to, signal my strong support for this. And in Tampa, just off the top of my head, at smaller venues, we've had some just remarkable individuals and artists come. I know Arturo Sandoval, the great Cuban refugee and Cuban exile, Cuban American artist. Shooter Jennings, I know, has been here recently, who is just such a great country star and just a wonderful artist, and so many. So our concert venues are feeling left without support, abandoned. And I strongly support this. So I hope that we surrender to this request. Sorry, Cheap Trick song name drop. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I cut you off.
No,
you're cool.
I need to give thanks for thanks to Tom and George. Thank you for being a leader in this. Thank you for informing me. Thank you for letting me get involved. This is a great effort that needs this city support, the city council support. But I'd also like to thank a few people, Tim Eberline, my legislative aide, for helping me put this together. Morris Massey, but more especially to our city attorney, Mr. Martin Shelby, for helping me draft this resolution. And thank you to the councilman for your support for this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other council members that would speak?
Carlson.
Go ahead, sir.
I just want to add in, I talked to Tom DeGeorge also, and it's a really sad situation. I think performing arts are essential to our community. And as you all kind of have alluded to, the incentives that were out there by the federal government, other places, didn't apply to these groups. And so they've lost sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a month. And the city of Tampa can't possibly cover the losses that they've had. And so I think a resolution to the federal government and state is a good idea, because they could potentially have the resource to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Miranda.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for all that's been said about Ybor City, and I really appreciate it. Being born in Ybor City, it doesn't make me any better than anyone else, but I can tell you about Ybor City way back. It's the only place that had 12,000 employees making cigars. At one time, we made more cigars than Cuba. The city of Tampa had more cigars being manufactured than the whole island of Cuba. Ybor City was a unique place, and still is. It's changed certainly, but it's coming around. And way back when it first started when I first got in council in the 70s, this Ybor City had three things no other had, and they were not in the positive. They were in the negative. They had prostitution, tumbleweed, and alcohol, illegal alcohol. Under the administration of Dick Greco, it started the review and renaissance coming back of Ybor City. And I got to thank that administration for starting and taking hard steps forward, although being criticized heavily for the investment that this mayor and this council way back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s made in Ybor City, and continue to do so with this council. When you look back at Ybor City and realize that a lot of things that were started in Ybor City were taken over by the federal government with a different name, mainly Mutual Aid Society. Well, what is that? That was when the people who had very little got together, people from the Italian Club, from Centro Español, from Centro Turiano, from the Cuban Club, from all others that had nothing but unity, nothing but to make a better life for their kid, nothing but have Tampa be better than any place else on earth. Those were the people that you have to give thankful to, because there was very little money. But yet, look at the buildings that they built. I don't think those federal grants then, but they built it one brick at a time, because they wanted to have the memories of what America gave to them back to the future. And these are the people that started it. What is Mutual Aid Society? mutual aid society is something now called Medicare. And those individuals, some had very little education, knew that healthcare was one of the main things that we needed, not only in Ybor City, but in this country. And to them, we have to give thanks for a lot of things that happened in Tampa, including putting Tampa on the map. Ybor City was the start of the things that snowballed into the great city that we are today. And I just want to give thanks to all those that are not here now. You've heard me say this before, that people don't talk, but I still listen to them. Those are the people that gave us the right, the opportunity to be the city that we are. And I want to give thanks to all those who don't vote, but are the ones that brought the city of Tampa here today where we're at. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any other council members? Hearing none. Councilman Citro, would you like to make a motion to move this resolution?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Happily, I move this resolution.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion from Councilman Citro, second from Councilman Miranda. Mr. Shelby, do we need a roll call on this, or can we just do a unanimous consent or ask that way?
A roll call, please.
Okay, roll call.
Vieira,
Yes.
Boots,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Ingfelder,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yeah.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council.
Citro. Yes, sir. All right. Items 2, 3, and 4, if you notice, are connected in many ways. So I believe the administration or the speakers that are on the line for this will do one presentation. We'll bundle it up just to keep the conversation streamlined. And if you'd like to begin, I don't know if it's the chief of staff, the chief of police, whomever it is, go ahead for items 2, 3, and 4. We're going to take them together and then have the discussions.
Good morning, Council. It's Brian Dugan, Chief of Police, Tampa Police Department. We have worked as a cooperative effort to collect the data and information. With me, I have Dr. Brianna Fox from University of South Florida. We have the City Attorney, Gina Grimes, Assistant City Attorney, Ursula Richardson, Assistant Chief of Police, Lee Burkaw, and Lieutenant Kimberly Hill. Dr. Fox will kick off with a timeline of the progressive policing policy in the U.S.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Excuse me, Gina Grimes, City Attorney. Sue Lane, could you allow us to share the screen so that we can put up our PowerPoint? Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead, Dr. Fox.
First technology issue of the morning. I'm very impressed. We made it this far. I'm Brianna Fox. I'm from the University of South Florida. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Criminology. I was asked by Mayor Castor in the midsummer to come on to her mayor's task force on community policing. And the goal was to have a task force that was listening to both the community members, law enforcement for our city, and of course, you look at the research and try to bring all three together and find the policies and practices and programs that were most effective at addressing concerns raised by citizens, but also looking at what was happening, in Tampa Police Department. Speaking about national trends, there obviously has been a trend towards looking more towards citizens to inform our, future policing strategies. This has been, I think, beneficial because we have, our police departments are empowered through our communities and through our citizens. I also think that Tampa Police Department has been extremely receptive in terms of working with me and the findings that I put forward, the accessibility to information, and I think just the willingness and the openness to want to do these types of things. I personally have worked with agencies around the country and, in fact, the globe, and they're not always, I think, as willing or as interested in improvement and moving forward. I've personally been very impressed because I've worked with agencies that have been under consent decree. I've worked with agencies where they felt voluntold, to work with me, and that is not the impression that I felt here in Tampa, where I am a resident. So I, of course, as a citizen myself, this is something that I was deeply engaged and interested in moving forward. So I have just a few points in terms of the work that we did this summer, the findings that I had, and then in terms of what we're doing moving forward. Just to briefly recap, as a member of the task force, my job, myself and my graduate students, they were predominantly doctoral and a few master's students at USF. We listened to the community members. We did this through focus groups, discussions. We also did some more quantitative analysis of survey data. We also listened to the police officers, and we wanted to make sure that we were getting, the full picture of information. And then I cross-referenced everything with different policies and programs that were available and evidence-based in nature. So I wanted to make sure that nothing that I would recommend hasn't been already tested and tried out in another agency and been shown to work. We're obviously living in an era of COVID, and we don't want to do things that are not, evidence-based and shown to work. Nobody wants to take a vaccine that doesn't work, and I didn't want that to happen in my city, in Tampa, where I was recommending something that wasn't shown to work in the past. So that was my the framework from which I was working. But the other part of the framework was the 5 pillars, 5 of the 6 that relate to the community, from the President Obama's pillars of 21st century policing. This was done in 2015 in the aftermath of Ferguson, and President Obama established a task force with scholars, police officials, and then members of the community, basically doing on a larger scale what we did here in Tampa. These are obviously massive efforts, incredibly difficult, and from that work, they identified these 6 pillars that they said police departments around the nation should, strive to address and implement in their, communities. So from those 5, we use those as a framework to see where we're at here in Tampa. The 5 pillars were building trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing and crime reduction, training and education. And then in light of what recently had transpired this summer with the killing of George Floyd and the responses to that, we added a 6th element. The mayor asked that I add this in, looking at funding and resources for police. So those are the 6 things that we mostly focused on, with looking at from the community and from the police department perspective. So from that, there were a few major takeaways. I heard some consistent themes, I saw some things, and then looking at the research, I came up with some findings based upon those 5 pillars, plus our little bonus pillar of the funding and resources for police. Just to quickly go over some of these, and I'm happy to either discuss all of them. I had 17 findings in total. Some of them were smaller in nature, some of them are larger in terms of maybe difficulty to implement or the size of the recommendation and finding. But I wanted to highlight just a few that I think are most impactful for Tampa, and also just stress that I've, again, worked with agencies around the country and globe, and typically when we're doing an exercise like this, there's maybe 1, 2 findings or changes. And in this case, there was 17, and that's not a referendum on the problems. It was more of I wanted to make sure that we were addressing everything that the community said, but the response to it, I think, is also notable. In other places where you have 2 findings, it's a massive overhaul. That's a big deal to implement. And here in Tampa, we had 17, and I was immediately told the same day, we're going to do every single one. And I just wanted to, pause and note how remarkable that is, because that's not something you see ever. So I do think that is very promising, and I just wanted to stress that based on my experience having done this, in various places. So in terms of building trust and legitimacy, my primary finding was implementing procedural justice as a model. You can do this through additional training. And then procedural justice is where you want to build community trust and increase perceptions of legitimacy in the police by refocusing on carrying out officer duties in a way that is objectively fair, consistent, transparent, reflective of understanding and community concerns, and treats citizens with dignity and respect. And, for many, I think this is what we, would expect of police every single day, and they are already doing. For others, I think it's refocusing on these goals and remembering that, we do serve the citizens, and that's what our primary objective should be. So making that just a primary, underscoring it, that this is what we want to do, and here's how to do it. A recent paper I did with colleagues at USF stressed the benefits of this, both for the community and for the police department. When we have citizens that are more trusting in police, that think police are more legitimate, they're more cooperative. They are more willing to empower police to do things that police need to do their jobs effectively. So it's one of these things that there's no loss. This is a benefit for everybody. It's a win for the police department. It's a win for the community. And it's something that when we've implemented it in other agencies around the country has been shown to do what we want it to do, which is increase trust, increase legitimacy, increase cooperation, and ultimately another benefit is we found reductions in crime with areas that have more procedural justice. So that was a major recommendation and one which will be implemented here in Tampa. Another is increasing transparency. I think that a consistent theme I heard was, we want to know as citizens what's going on with our police departments, and by knowing and being able to feel more that they can hold police accountable. And so some findings I had was put our policies online, make it easily accessible for citizens. I think this is a major finding, right? This is important, but it's one that, again, the police department immediately said, yes, we were happy to do. And I think that just speaks again to the fact that making our policies and data available to citizens where they're not getting information, twice annually and in a delayed fashion, I think will help for citizens feeling increased trust in police, but also making it so they're just feeling like we understand everything that's going on with the police department. And again, that just, I think, speaks to the police community relations for here in Tampa, and then for others who want to look outside of Tampa as well. In terms of policy and oversight, one of my major findings was relating to the update of our use of force policy here in Tampa. And that was something within 2 days of my recommendations being made that Chief Dugan had implemented. We specifically, one of the things I was recommending is to add attempts to de-escalate when possible to the use of force policy. This is in alignment with the 8 can't wait recommendations. And this is something that I think was immediately achieved. Not, again, this wasn't a big, change, but it is a meaningful one. So that was something that I thought was, again, just indicative of where we're at here in Tampa. I've only a few more left, I promise. So the next one was on community policing and crime reduction. In terms of crime reduction, the citizens felt, based upon our data and research, that we were in pretty great shape here in Tampa. There was very low fear of crime. Citizens felt that the police department was doing a good job in terms of keeping crime at a low level, responding appropriately, and solving crimes when they did occur. So I focused my work predominantly on the community policing element. And one element of that is, are we doing community-oriented policing? The difference between that and a typical policing model is the fact that we want to encourage law enforcement to have positive, non-enforcement related actions and interactions with citizens. So when I say non-enforcement related, I mean not necessarily to make an arrest or to gather intelligence. It's just to get to know community members, to have community members get to know police. And having this be a philosophy rather than just, one-off programs, of which there are many, many in Tampa, and many of which I didn't know about, and other citizens didn't know about, which again emphasizes the need for communication and transparency. because if it's, being done, but we don't know about it, it's the same thing. If we can make sure that everybody is aware of these things, we obviously will have a better perception. So I recommended, one of my findings was to turn this relationship building into our philosophy here in Tampa. And again, I think this was immediately received, and these efforts to have programs such as Cops Out of Cars, where police officers who are doing their normal patrols just take time every week to get out and walk around and speak to community members for no other reason than they want to know who lives on that street and help, change a light bulb rather than, have the community member do it themselves. Just things like that I think really go a long way. And when I was speaking to community members that were in our focus groups, consistently said that would be a major way to build trust, and for them to feel more comfortable with the police that are here in our community and that we need, particularly for part 2 of this, which is crime reduction. In terms of training and education, there were 2 major themes. One was, it's not the quantity of training, it's the quality. And that really speaks to some of the items that I was addressing earlier in terms of evidence-based practices and making sure that we're doing the best thing, not just something. So they consistently said, let's go for the quality of training and not just more of it. And sometimes actually more can get in the way of the quality. If you're just getting too much, you may have it, obfuscated. But one of the few trainings I did recommend was de-escalation training. This has been increasingly used across the country. There has been research on the PERF model, which is ICAT, Integrating Communications Assessment and Tactics Training. And they found from evaluations of this that officers who were trained in this were less likely to use force, and there were also fewer citizen complaints against officers after this ICAT training. So this is the one that I would the vast majority, when we spoke to them, said, we need the police. Some were actually worried, what would we do if I had a crime happen at my house and I didn't have a police officer there to respond? There were some that said, if I have something bad happen, I need an officer there, lickety split. There were a lot of feelings about this, that they felt that we need the police, but there were also some areas that they felt we can use additional help. And one was responding to mental health and social welfare calls. There was I think this has been a call across the country, and here in Tampa, we looked at this for addressing this concern. And what struck me was that, in the past few decades, we've had a increasing number of people with mental health issues and social welfare needs calling police to help address them. And it is putting more and more on our law enforcement shoulders. We're asking them to do more, but we are also saying, we may not be able to fully fund it or address it. So I think for me, looking at these co-response models where people have implemented social welfare and maybe mental health workers to go out with police and respond to these types of cases, there's been a positive results where there's far fewer arrests made in these cases. They are typically less violent or less have a propensity for violence to occur. And most importantly, these people are able to get help rather than end up in jail or prison. And that's the thing that we would most want to avoid. So I think that was a major finding, and I know it's been addressed through City Council, and it's being looked at from the Mayor's office and with the Police Department. So I was pleasantly surprised on that front as well. Those were all of my major findings and takeaways, but I'm very happy to either address questions at the end or speak to some of the other findings if Council is interested. Thank you.
Council, do you have any questions at this time, or would you like to wait until we hear everybody and then we speak from there?
I've got a question for Dr. Fox.
Me too, Carlson.
Okay, so we have, I heard Dingfelder, Carlson, is Vieira. Did you want to speak, sir?
Vieira does not have a question at this time.
Okay, Dingfelder, Carlson.
I'm going to defer everything to the end. I'm fine.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. Dingfelder, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Fox, for joining us and for participating in all of this. I wasn't part of the process that the mayor put together on those Saturday mornings, and I guess you were, but when you were interviewing people and asking them for their reactions, were you out in the community at large with random samples of our citizens, or were you interviewing people who were at these Saturday morning meetings that was organized by the city?
That's a great methodological question, and I appreciate that. It's a great one I would put on our comp exam.
I've got a master's in statistics and genetics, so there you go.
All right. Well, yeah, you can tell. So I was able to only talk to people that they were part of our task force on policing. This was selected and I was, part of it. So that was our sample that we were, given. I would be thrilled, of course, a randomized sample is the best, and that's the goal. However, to address your concerns, because I think I know what you're getting at, I wanted to see how generalizable some of these perceptions were across different groups. I just so happened through, luck, to have done a survey that was very similar to the one that we had done with the task force with USF undergraduate students. They are obviously also not a random selection of community members, but they are, just other members of the community and represent a different, group. And there were very few statistically significant differences. So, I think that helps, right? Whenever we're talking about these research findings, we're always concerned about validity and generalizability. And in terms of how generalizable our findings were, I think that helps support it. But if funding were available, I would be very thrilled to do a randomized control trial if you ever wanted that.
Well, I think, and I appreciate you hitting it on the nail head. I think that, and I'm glad that you did what you did, and it's the best available, through the summer, under this quick process that we've been in. But I think from a scientific perspective, I think it's, and I hope that the city definitely can fund a more scientific study and random questions to the questions to the random community. I think inherently it sounds like we have we had a more educated, probably higher socioeconomic demographic at the Saturday morning event, and also with your USF college students than we might otherwise. But so that's question number one. Thank you for your response. Question number two is, later in the program, the chief and his staff are going to be talking about diversity within TPD. And Chief Bennett, Chief Dugan, I appreciate you providing the last 10 years of information. When I looked at the last 10 years of information, it looks like as of 2010, we got to a point of basically 69% white, 14% black, and 14% Hispanic. And then 20 years later, or 10 years later in 2020, we're at 68% white, 12% black, and 17% Hispanic. That's total officers at TPD. So we're sort of static in terms of our diversity, even though the population of Tampa is 45% white, 24% black, and 26% Hispanic. And we've now grown to 400,000 people, according to the Planning Commission. Anyway, my question, Dr. Fox, is generally not related to Tampa, because I think this is a very general, broad question, is have there scientifically been proven, or do you see benefits to diversity in a police department that should reflect the community, number one, and number two, how do we get there? How do we improve? Or do you have any suggestions on, improving those numbers if you think it's important that we do improve them?
That's a great question, and I think, one of the key, I did actually address this as one of my findings, but I think having our police department, represent our community is something that we want to strive towards. One way that we can try to do this, and I think some of these are already.
Let me stop you there. Why do you think it's important? And I didn't see it as one of your findings, but I appreciate it if it is.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is it touches in the community-oriented policing. That I think it was under that bullet point where I spoke about this specific finding. And the reason is that if somebody grows up in that community, there's a greater understanding of what that, the dynamics are like, of the understanding of the culture, of understanding what the neighborhood is like, understanding of, the city. So I think that there's a lot of benefits to having people who are from the community, live in the community, represent the community. Some people will say there's drawbacks, but I think not in terms of diversity, but in terms of, living and working in the same area. But I think overall, there have been some attempts to do this here in Tampa. I know that there are scholarships for people to attend the police academy. People get sponsored from, different areas to go through the academy and to go through, to get a college degree, and then of course to join the force. I think that all of these things, if we want to do them, a lot of them cost money. And so I think that spoke to the last item in terms of funding. If these are goals, we may have to address them by enhancing, by incentivizing officers to live in certain areas of the community, by incentivizing members from that community to go through the academy and to, then want to work with the police department and to, to get them through the, teen academies and to have them be part of, different groups that are kind of the pathway into the police department. So I think it's a long-term thing. It's not just something we can do overnight, but setting the foundation up would be phenomenal. And I think we'll end up, like with most things, they're all great goals, but I think we have to put both sustained effort and potentially, I really think we need to put funding towards them as well.
Thank you very much.
All right, next speaker is Councilmember Carlson and Councilmember Goose.
Dr. Fox, thank you for your time today. And I watched your presentation a couple weeks ago, and from what I heard anecdotally, not scientifically, was that the community seemed to really like the suggestions you made. And I know the mayor was on the video with you and was listening intently. Follow-up chatter was that the community is skeptical about whether the city, either the mayor or city council, will implement all of your findings. I wonder if you have any sense as to how much of what you recommended the mayor's office will implement, and are there any parts of your findings that city council should put into ordinance?
Well, thank you. I think I neglected to speak about this during my talk, so I apologize for that. But one of the big takeaways for me was at the end of that presentation, I think it was on August 29th, both Mayor Castor and Chief Dugan immediately said, yes, we plan to implement all of these, and they specifically asked if I would work with them to both implement, oversee, and evaluate it. So since then, there have been, again, funding is always a challenge. However, big organizations in our community, including the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, have helped to fund this effort. This would be a long and very time-consuming process, right? There's 17 different things, so to do this would obviously take a lot of, energy and funding. So they have already committed to help. Obviously, the more that we could get, I think the either longer we could do follow-up or we could have more resources to do this. However, in terms of accessibility and being able to, work with the police department, I've already been told I can have access to, if I want to go on ride-alongs, I can do that. If I want to speak with officers, I can do that. If I want to speak with community members, I can do that. If I want to look at different programs and sit in on trainings, I can do that. So for me, being able to have that level of transparency and to go in and be able to see exactly, how these programs are being implemented, the degree and the nature of it, again, is phenomenal for me, not only as a researcher, but also as a community member. And then in terms of evaluations, I'm doing program evaluations, and scientific methodology is my background. It's what I've done with other agencies. So for two in particular, I specifically asked with procedural justice training and the de-escalation training if we could do full, scientific evaluations of them. Again, these are expensive, but the answer was yes. And so for me, I'm just trying to get all of our ducks in a row to make that feasible. But in terms of from the police department side and from the mayor, there was never any question in terms of whether I would be able to. I think it's just making the logistics align to make sure that I'm fully able to do so. And I don't think that there's even a concern on that front.
And if there's anything that you think that we should implement as a city council, just so the public knows, the way the charter is set up, quote unquote, regulating the police is a control that the mayor has, not city council, but city council can pass ordinances. And so I would just ask you, as you go through your process, if you see something that we should put into ordinance that's comparable to other cities, please let us know. And one final piece of this, the city was criticized widely several months ago, and I don't want to talk about any specific case, but where the social media or communication side of the police, these are not, I think, official officers enforcing the law, but where things were posted on social media that quote unquote doxed someone, or members of the public felt social media was used as a like a political weapon against the public. Is there any? Did you look at that in your study? And is there any kind of benchmark policies that either council or the mayor should put in place for that?
Technology and social media is one of the pillars, and so we did look extensively and talk to the community members about this. The specific concern that you raised was not brought up to me. However, we did consistently hear that, social media, they felt like they wanted it to be more dialogic in terms of communication, so members of the community could feel like they're getting information, but they could also, engage with the police department, to be able to not only have it be, a communication sharing tool, but also feel like there's a sense of community, right? Like we are all in this together, and we're, following the social media, and it's not just about posting when certain incidents happen, but it's just about, well, there's different programs and things going on that people frankly don't know about. So they felt very strongly like using social media as a tool for that, to inform them, for transparency, and then of course for communication was a strong concern. In terms of an ordinance, I would have to, I'm not a lawyer, so I would have to think about that, but I appreciate the offer very, very much, and I would like to stay in touch with City Council about these offers.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Councilmember Goose. Do any other council members wish to speak after Councilmember Goose?
Here, if I may, just briefly, if I may, sir.
Okay, after Councilman Goose. Councilman Goose, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership this morning, as always. Ms. Fox, thank you for being here with this presentation. But I must say that, knowledge in books and working in the field are two different things at times. And I like some of the work you've done. I think it's a progressive move, but when I look at some of your pillars, they stand out to me very clearly. And a person who's been in the trenches, who understands policing, who understands communities, these problems are institutional. And until you change the institutional mindset, you'll continue to have these type of issues. I always commend Mayor Sandy Freeman because she took a bold and courageous step when she put a program in place to attempt to hire 101 African Americans on the police department when I first came on in 89 and 90. Most of those gentlemen that I came through with are retired, they're business owners, they've gone on with higher education and so forth and so on. See, the problem you have with police institutions is that you have to have, again, funding is one issue, but you have to have a goal set to say, we're going to have a recruiting budget to recruit when your numbers are low. When I look at the numbers, which I already knew what the numbers kind of were already, they're low and they've been low a long time. They were low when I first came on. It came up a little bit, but then it dipped again. You talked about community policing. I mean, that's the pillar of it all. If you don't know the community, you don't know anything. I remember when I was a young guy, we had these X-ray squads where the squad was really diverse, to be honest with you. And we had a knack when something went wrong. We were there. We knew the players. We could get things moving, get things solved. The community was engaged. Policing evolved and changed, and we went to a different style. That happens, but it always revolves back. You look at anything with clothes in the 70s or 60s. Those things come back. They come back, and I think we have to go back a little bit and be engaged in more of a community-based police style, dealing with the public. When I came on as a young boy, I can remember the Chief of Staff, John Bennett, who used to work at the Winn-Dixie at Fourth and Hillsborough. It's no longer there. I used to go see John working there, talk with him. Met a guy by the name of Dinsmore, used to come to the Mr. Submarine while I was the manager at Fourth and Hillsborough. Those guys come through and had a conversation, talked. They understood the community. See, the problem you have is you have to have a system in place to where when officers are coming on or while they're in the academy, they're engaged with the community then to understand. Because if you're living in Avila, you're living in an area where you've never been accustomed to dealing with other cultures, other races, then you're biased, you're blind because you've been told disparaging things about those groups of people. And you have to be engaged in that process to understand. So what I would say to you with your work and your continued work, look inside the institution. You have to look at diversity inside the institution. It's not just the police department. I've had this conversation with the chief about the fire department. I'm very disturbed about that as well with those numbers. 1 or about 1.5 African Americans in our class. That's outrageous for a city of our size. And I'm very disturbed about that. So it's not just the police. It's fire too. When Chief Ford was here, he had a program in place to where those numbers were rising like crazy. The most African Americans I've ever seen on the fire department, when as a police officer, I go to see, wow, we got some people that look like me. We recruit, you may have to go outside the city sometimes to find those athletes, to find some of those folks who didn't make it in a career choice they wanted, but here's an opportunity. You can make some decent money, be a steward to the community, and work hard to make sure that you're fostering relationships. It's very hard to get some outside folks to come inside the city to work. You're right. You've got to have some better housing, some better opportunities. Most police officers I know are not going to work in the city. I don't care if you gave them a free house. Probably wouldn't work in the city. That's my experience and knowledge of being on the ground and knowing what goes on. That's what has to happen. You've got to be inside the house to understand the house. You have to make sure that when you look at promotions, that they're fair across the board. These are all issues that are internal. And when you look at those things internal, then you can be able to fix someone. You'll never fix all of it because you always will have some biases. But you have to look at the institution as a whole. And I think once you look at that, you can really be able to really break some of that foundation down and do a new mold and start moving forward. But I tell you, community policing is one of the best ways of moving on. I know we've got short time, but I won't belabor it, but I would say you need to look at the institution itself inside. Thank you for your time, Dr. Fox.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. And ma'am, thank you so much for your hard work and for your presentation. Your presentation, I know, is predicated upon many, many, many hours of work and dedication. And we really appreciate that. There's a lot of important issues that have been addressed here. First, I mean, I know I speak for all of us when I say that I really respect the opinions and words of our colleague, Councilman Goods. I respect that a lot. And I thank you, Councilman Goods, for your words, experience, as well as your service, and just your speaking from the heart on your roughly 30 years of service with TPD. I appreciate that. Diversity is very important. We need to have a law enforcement team that continues to make strides in looking like the community that those law enforcement officers serve. That includes not only race and ethnicity, but gender and religious affiliation. I want to mention that New Tampa, an area in our city and in my district, is one of the most religiously diverse areas, home to a lot of Sikhs, Muslims, Hindus, etc. I think that's important. You know, another thing I'd like to highlight that I know has been addressed in the report and many other areas is police officers living within city limits. I don't know what incentives exist. I can privately inquire in that regard. But I'd love to see incentives that give us progress on more officers living within city limits. I believe, and I could be wrong, statistics show that it's less than 1 in 5 of police officers living within city limits. This is important. I'd love to see monetary incentives for officers to live within city limits. I think that's important. And an overall narrative that I continue to get from this report and many reports is that change, and I've said this again and again, change requires more money. Change requires more money. Community policing requires money. Community engagement requires money. More training and higher standards require more money. Implicit bias, as we're going to be taking up soon, training requires more money. If I have a house and I want improvements, solar panels, a better roof, updated plumbing, it's going to cost me money. So change requires not only effort, but more money. I think that's an important principle. I'm reminded of my Sunday school days from the book of Exodus, I believe it was, where they said you can't build bricks without straw. Well, just like you can't build bricks without straw, you can't implement positive change and progress in law enforcement without more money. So I think that's a narrative that we're seeing in some of these reports that are, pushing for positive change. So again, thank you very much for your remarks, ma'am, and for your hard work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to ask any questions or speak at this time? Any council members? All right, I hear none. Ms. Grimes, did you have anything else?
Mr. Chair, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, we actually hadn't finished our presentation, so we'll continue with that.
Okay,
the next part of our presentation is on TPD policy and performance progression. And as a part of that, I will continue with Dr. Fox's remarks about 8 Can't Wait. In June, the council asked for, obviously in June it was highlighted that the 8 Can't Wait initiatives were out there. And that is a part of initiatives that developed from the 21st century policing model, the report that Dr. Fox talked about in 2015. The report that you asked for asked me to do a comparison of the police department's policies and the 8 Can't Wait initiatives. And the slide that's before you on the screen is showing that the Tampa Police Department meets all of the 8 initiatives for the 8 Can't Wait. But as a part of that, Dr. Fox mentioned, although the city of Tampa or its police department has been training in de-escalation, scenario-based training, just not black and white testing, but actually putting the officers in those scenarios that they may face in real life, and giving them the opportunity to de-escalate in those situations. The department went further, and as a part of what Dr. Fox was speaking to, even though they've been training officers in that since 2014, the department did implement written policies to incorporate the de-escalation whenever possible, when it's feasible, into standard operating procedure 538. And so now it's actually in writing and reinforcing that the department in its training and all of its follow through and its policies is dedicated to de-escalating, training its officers in de-escalation. Another part of that is, although the department in 2014 banned shooting at vehicles, which is one of the 8 Can't Wait initiatives, the department took a step further to strengthen its policy to make sure that there were no quote unquote loopholes. And then the department has affirmatively asked officers to not shoot at vehicles for the purpose of disabling it, and has gone even further to ask officers to make every effort to move out of the path of a moving vehicle, which, as council probably is aware from different incidents that have been shown in the media, usually a driver driving at police officers or in their way is usually what provokes a response of deadly force. And our department is asking officers to make every effort to not put yourself in the path of a vehicle, and if you are in the path of a vehicle, to make every effort to move out of the path. To show that to follow up on Dr. Fox's information about our policies being progressive and our department wanting to do all that we can to do better, the 8 Can't Wait initiative. 8 Can't Wait initiative also includes 11 other jurisdictions in the state of Florida, and the Tampa Police Department is the only jurisdiction in the state of Florida that has met all 8 of the 8 Can't Wait initiatives, and that's on your screen now. And so Tampa has met every single one, in that we have made an affirmative policy decisions, affirmative training efforts in order to make sure that we follow these particular initiatives to make us a better police department, and obviously, hopefully, to have less incidents, major incidents when it comes to use of force and or use of deadly force.
Good morning, Council. This is Lee Popa, the Assistant Chief of Operation. I'd like to begin by highlighting the evolution of the Tampa Police Department. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s and prior, the reputation of Tampa was often centered around crime. While we had a lot going for this great city, our community was plagued with crime and disorder. This hampered our progression and delayed our progress. The chart in front of you illustrates the total number of Part 1 crimes in comparison with cities in similar size to Tampa. As you can see, Tampa is on the far left, and the red bar illustrates nearly 35,000 crimes in 2003. In comparison, the only city with a higher crime rate was St. Louis. The green bar illustrates 2008, the violet 2013, and the blue 2018. As you can see, by 2018, Tampa reduced their crime below every other city on this chart and went from having one of the highest crime rates for a city its size to the lowest. In the next few slides, I'll review the process of how we achieved this success. This graph narrows our focus on the crime reduction efforts of the Tampa Police Department. In 2002, there were 35,380 victims of Part 1 crimes. Part 1 crimes include murder, sexual battery, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, grand theft auto, and arson. From 2002 to 2019, nearly 2 decades, crime was reduced by nearly 77%. So we went from having 35,380 victims of crimes a year to 8,145 victims per year. That's 27,235 less victims in just 2019. And as you know, being a victim of a crime is a traumatic experience, which we all as a community aspire to prevent from occurring. Early in this evolution, the Tampa Police Department revised its mission statement to a more simplistic statement and to be actionable, inclusive, and accountable. When I guest lecture at local colleges and universities, I ask students who work if they know their employer's mission statement. And I'm lucky if at least one of them raises their hands and says that they know their mission statement. However, at the Tampa Police Department, the overwhelming majority of our officers know and understand our mission, which is to reduce crime and enhance the quality of life through a cooperative partnership with all citizens. For nearly 2 decades, our officers have performed exemplary and established outstanding relationships with our community to collectively reduce crime by 77%. All right, this illustration in front of you is bar graphs that continue to narrow the focus to 5 crimes: burglary, robbery, auto burglary, auto theft, and violent crime or aggravated assaults. As you can see, in 2002, 6,283 of our citizens had their homes broken into, 2,334 were victims of a robbery, and nearly 5,400 had their vehicles burglarized. Over 6,720 vehicles were stolen, and approximately 3,143 were victims of aggravated assault. These crimes totaled up to 23,866 victims. This was unacceptable and had to be improved. Subsequently, the Tampa Police Department changed its strategy and developed a new business plan. The revised mission statement was only the first part of this plan. You may recall our business plan included the focus on 4 concepts. A misnomer of this plan was that it meant we focused on 4 crimes: burglary, auto burglary, grand theft auto, and robbery. However, the focus on 4 actually highlighted 4 separate principles. Those principles are intelligence-led policing, data-driven approach, proactive and preventative policing, and most importantly, partnering with the community. Intelligence-led policing was tracking crimes as they occur and collaborating both internally and externally. And under this category, that's where the big 4 crimes focused, which eventually evolved into the big 5. Under data-driven approaches, that's where we use the data to strategically adjust our deployment to be most effective. And we found that in decentralizing numerous different sectors inside the department. Proactive and preventative policing is where the officers became more engaged with the community and increased public support for our officers and citizens through foot patrols, front porch roll calls, and community-oriented policing, problem solving, and actually focusing on the root causes of the crime. And the partnering with the community was part of our mission statement and collaborating through a variety of traditional and non-traditional programs. And I'll highlight some of these programs in a future slide. When we update this bar chart with the 2019 reductions, you can see burglaries were reduced by 84%, or roughly 5,000 less burglary victims per year. Robberies were reduced by 84%, from 2,334 per year to less than 300 per year. Auto burglaries were reduced by nearly 88%, auto theft by 90%, and violent crimes by 68%, with a total reduction in these crimes by nearly 85%. So in 2002, there were 23,866 victims of these crimes, and in 2019, the number of victims was reduced to below 4,500. This reduction in crime lays the foundation for economic growth and prosperity. People want to move to our great city to live, work, and play, and Tampa is an economic hotspot which capitalized on this foundation. The hardworking officers in Tampa are the greatest in the nation, and the data supports their effort. In just the last decade, crime in Tampa dropped 47.4%. The average for the statewide Florida is 37.8%, and then the average for major cities across the nation, and those major cities would be cities over 200,000, is down 31.75%. So the Tampa crime rate is 18% less than the statewide average and 52% lower than the major city average. During the same time period, Tampa's arrest rate dropped by 63.4%, compared to the statewide of 41% and the major city reduction of 40.7%. This demonstrates that our officers are working smarter and utilizing intelligence to increase their effectiveness. Your officers are laser focused in arresting less individuals, reducing crime more effectively, and moreover, our officers are solving crimes at a much higher rate. Furthermore, when arrests are reduced, the risk level only continues to decline. Tampa's crime clearance rate is 32.8 per 100 cases of all serious crimes. The 2019 statewide average is 25.7 per 100, and the major cities rate is 18.7 per 100. So again, your officers are solving more crimes, making less arrests, and reducing crime at a higher rate than the statewide average and the major city average. Part of this process includes our proactive procedural justice approach to ensuring fairness and transparency in our actions. This includes, but is not limited to, our community-oriented philosophy, our juvenile arrest avoidance program, our adult pre-arrest diversion program, and our marijuana civil citation program. And if you don't already know, TPD has its golden rule, which is treating everybody with dignity and respect, which is ingrained in our officers from day one. This is all accomplished while receiving over 1 million calls for public safety service and responding to approximately 600,000 calls in just the last year. We firmly believe our relations with and partnerships with the community is the recipe to our success. Our officers routinely engage in ad hoc, non-traditional law enforcement activities, such as stopping and talking to children and playing basketball and other things like just showing them their police car. Officers also routinely engage in volunteer events, engaging with the community in addition to non-law enforcement events. I'll highlight a few of those events. One is Adopt a School program. Recently, officers adopted Foster Elementary, and they go out and they mentor students at that school. We have Chief Dugan's Community Investment Grant, which is putting bad money to good use and using $10,000 of drug forfeiture funds that are vested into 4 local organizations that make a positive difference in the community. The chief has his appreciation night where he recognizes community partners. We have the Coffee with a Cop, which I believe we have a picture of that up here, that we do on a regular basis. We have a student intern program where we provide opportunities for recruitment, development, and relationships for future employees. We have something that became really successful during the COVID was the drive-by birthday wishes, where officers drive by and do a semi-parade with their cars. Very well received by the community during the pandemic. We do our DUI education, and another popular program is our front porch roll calls, where officers hold roll calls at locations of a residence or a business to build closer relationships with the community. Of course, we participate in the Great American Teach-In, and as you all know, we have our homeless affairs liaisons. We have our neighborhood watch program and an Operation Tag It program. That's where officers actually get out of their cars and they walk and talk in the community to prevent auto burglaries. We have our PAL boxing program through our Police Athletic League. This is a youth boxing program offered free of charge to those age 8 to 18. And as you all know, we have our Resources and Community Hope program, our Rich House. This is a safe haven for kids in the city's most economically challenged areas, with an on-site officer who serves as a role model, mentor, tutor, and liaison. We have our ride-along program, our Safe Place initiative, our summer presentations where we engage with the community at parks and rec sites for our youth. We have our Black History Celebration, our Citizens Academy that Citro speaks so well about all the time. And we have our Youth Academy, our Bigs in Blue program, and our Bridging the Gap Field Day programs. There's too many to list. That's just a highlight from some of those programs. As you can see on this slide, one of our officers is mentoring a youth at our Rich House, and the other one is a Coffee with a Cop event. I'd like to conclude with a brief overview of the advanced training our officers receive. This picture highlights our simulator training, which is scenario-based and teaches the officer how to verbally de-escalate the situation. The officer's response and ability has direct influence on the outcome of the scenario. If you've had an opportunity to attend our Citizens Academy, we walk our guests through these scenarios. And by the conclusion of the academy, we have a plethora of student testimonials who have a newfound appreciation for what we do. Just to highlight some of the training that we receive, officers, when they go to the academy, receive over 770 hours of training. Then once they're hired, they receive 360 hours of in-house training before they go out into the field with their training officer and receive at a minimum 640 hours. So before they are out solo, they're up to 1,770 hours of training. And in addition to that, our law enforcement agency meets and exceeds FDLE's mandatory requirements for in-service training. As you know, or as we all know, businesses and citizens will not move into a city that is not safe. And Tampa is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, and people want to move to Tampa. The hard work of our officers in concert with our community has laid this foundation. Police departments across the nation have come and continue to visit Tampa to see firsthand how we achieve this success. So thank you for the opportunity to highlight the efficiency and effectiveness of our police department. Our organization is apt for change and continues to evolve and improve, and we welcome the feedback and input from our community as they are our essential partners in our continued success.
Very much. Who is presenting next?
Lieutenant Hill.
Good morning, Council. This is Lieutenant Kimberly Hill, Tampa Police Support Services Division, which houses both of our personnel and training units. So this morning I have the privilege of speaking with you all about diversity and recruiting, which, like Councilman Goods, I'm very, very passionate about. So the slide you should see up right now is a breakdown of our department's demographics for the last month, which would have been August 2020. So we're unique in the fact that we track demographics on a monthly basis as opposed to annual or even once every 2 years like a lot of the other agencies. And we do this because it's important that we keep track of where we're at all times. So that way we know where we need to improve. And our goal is and has always been to try to mirror the community. So we have to keep those stats up to date. So currently you'll see from the chart that we're at 42% affected class. So although we're above the national average, we always strive to do better. So what we do is we look at the numbers and we determine where we can make improvements. And from there, we create initiatives to help improve in those areas. So first, I'd like to talk to you about what we currently offer, and then if I can get into some of the projects we're working on that I'm actually very, very excited about. So I know that Ms. Fox and Chief Burkhall kind of touched on a few of them, but the next slide should show some of the events that we participate in, and these are pretty much on an annual basis. So recently, I've been involved in a number of meetings and different committees with community leaders on diversity issues and how we move forward as a community. And what I realized from all the different meetings and the groups is that at the end of the day, you just don't know what you don't know, right? So a lot of people are just not actually aware of some of the programs we offer. And I'll just give you a couple quick examples. One of my last meetings was with a group of pastors, and one of the gentlemen began talking about, well, what about if over the summer we can get a group of kids together and kind of just show them what you guys do? And the whole time I couldn't wait for him to finish his sentence because I couldn't wait to jump in and start telling him that we actually have a youth academy, and we offer that youth academy every summer. And what it is we bring kids out from all of our local schools, our SROs work with them, and we come out and we kind of give them like a mini academy. We let them do driving, the simulator, we teach them about policies and procedures. And even at the end of that academy, they go home with a laptop or an iPad. And a lot of kids, don't have one, so that's always helpful. at the completion of the academy. And then also our Explorer program. Some people aren't even aware, like what does an Explorer do? And our Explorers actually learn about Florida criminal law, traffic laws. We teach them about our own department policies and procedures. We teach them how to administer first aid, how to handle crimes, incidents such as traffic crashes, traffic stops, domestic violence. So they go through defensive tactics, they do ride-alongs, and you can start doing that at the age of 14 years old. I know Chief Burkhaw mentioned our PAL, Police Athletics League. You know, they do boxing, they do reading after school, football, and during school, our Big and Blues. We have officers that actually go out. They have lunch with kids on duty. You know, they spend an hour with them doing homework and just talking about life in general with all of these youth. Our Rich House, you can go after school. We have one in Sulphur Springs and Robles Park. You know, after school they go, they're able to talk to officers, they're able to do their homework. It's a place for them to go have, you know, dinner. A lot of people aren't even aware that it exists, and it's just so important to us. Our internship program, so many kids are looking for hours. They're not sure if they want to get into law enforcement, and they have no idea that we offer the internship program, and we do it 3 times a year. So fall, spring semester, and summer. If you just go online, tampagov.net and /police, you can read about our internships. And that was just one meeting. Another meeting I'm at, someone talked about the fact that the that the police academy costs money. And they're like, do you offer a sponsorship? And I got into the story about how I got here. You know, everyone comes from a different background. Everyone comes from a different upbringing. And me personally, I worked at Cracker Barrel when I went to college. I had to pay my own bills. I didn't have help. So I wanted to go into law enforcement, but I can't quit my job and pay thousands of dollars for a police academy. So I happened to see a flyer at USF that said Tampa was offering a sponsorship. So I put in for it, and thank God I got it. And 14 years later, I'm here now speaking to you. And those are some of the stories that, you know, people just have no idea that we even have a police sponsorship. And the good thing about this, and forgive me, but I'm going to go ahead and take a little PR moment and let you know that we're actually, October 1st, we open our police scholarship. We refer to it as a scholarship, but for anyone interested, when you go online, make sure you look up Police Recruit. And our Police Recruit program, what that is we hire you as a police recruit. We pay for your entire academy. And then once you graduate and pass the state exam, you come on as a full-time officer. So just becoming a police recruit, you earn $19.50 an hour. You have full benefits, insurance. We pay for tuition, uniforms. And the requirements, the basic ones are just 21 years old. You have to be 21, a U.S. citizen, have a valid driver's license, and pass our background. You have to be suitable character and overall physical condition. But, you know, that's an opportunity that a lot of people, it's a deal breaker for them because, again, they can't put themselves through the academy. And if they don't know about it, then they can't even put in for it. So we're really looking forward to that. Now that opens October 1st through October 30th. And the most important thing is if you do not apply online between those dates, then you won't be eligible. So we're currently advertising in the Sentinel. Bay News 9 is going to do a story on it. And you'll even see Heartline Bus. We're putting our flyers on the Heartline Bus. So that way it gets around to everyone so people are aware. So I know someone mentioned it earlier, we recruit in all of the local schools, the colleges, especially the athletic department. Right now, our scholarship class starts, the one that went on last year, they're getting ready to start the academy, and Chief Dugan was at USF talking to some football players, and one of them put in for our scholarship, and he's going to be in this class that starts next month. So those are the type of things we look for. You have to get out there, be involved in the community, and make sure that people are aware. So even though the programs we do now, I love them, I think they're great, and I want to make sure people are aware of them, what I really want to talk about is what we're doing, what's coming up. We have a phenomenal recruiter, Officer Melanie Gardner, and she's came up with several good projects this year that I'm looking forward to her starting. And the first one has to do with the local schools. So yes, we go out, we recruit, we talk to seniors, but she had the idea, well, why just talk to seniors? Why not go out and start early? A lot of these schools have criminal justice programs. So why not go out into the criminal justice programs, and we can follow these kids throughout the years. We can really get to know them. We can make sure they understand what the job entails, what the requirements are. And, you know, when they graduate and they go to college, we can also offer, people think of the Tampa Police Department as just police, but we have so many other positions within the police department, like communication technicians, which are dispatchers, neighborhood affair liaisons, crime analysts. There's so many other jobs that we just want to make sure we get out in the community and make sure that they're aware of them. And the kids graduating from these criminal justice academies, they can always come on board as a civilian in the beginning and let them finish their education. And maybe that will even open doors for them to be able to get one of our scholarships. She also talked about the recruiting team. So right now we have a social media team, and what the recruiting team would be is we have over 900 officers, so we decided why not use them as a tool? Why only have our recruiter go out and recruit? So we want to educate our officers on some of the requirements to become a law enforcement officer. We want to educate them on when we're hiring, when we're not, so they can go out into the community. They meet people every day, whether it's on a call or just doing a community event. We want them to be able to go out year round and recruit for us. We think that we will see a significant difference. And we have examples here already. I mean, I know Curtis Smith, Councilman Goode, yourself, Ida Walker. Miss Ida will tell you that she would not be where she is as the chief secretary if an officer didn't stop her and talk to her and follow her, you know, throughout her childhood. And that's what made her even get into law enforcement to begin with. So those are the stories that really make a difference. There are people from our community who now work here who can go back out and tell their stories, and kids, youth they really understand it. They understand where they're coming from, and they look at people like Miss Ida and Curtis and they say, well, wait a minute, if they did it, why can't I? So those are some of the things we're looking at. And even think about it like this. When you go every day, what's something we all have to do? We get gas. So when I'm at Wawa getting gas, you begin to know that clerk. You start talking to them. We start letting them know about some of the opportunities with the police department. That's the type of recruiting that we're looking at. Yes, the recruiting events are good, but the problem is not everyone goes to those recruiting events. So if we can get out in the community every day and make sure they know what we offer, the job opportunities, we think that's going to make a difference in some of these numbers. And even working with the community leaders just to strengthen our partnership with the community. I know Detective Bradford came up with unified servants. It's one of the things we talked to with a group of pastors. And unified servants, it signifies that we're all public servants and we're all working together to improve and impact our community. And the mission that she came up with was to foster a cohesive working relationship between public safety and community leaders that'll build trust, transparency, and impact and influence through training, collaboration, and effective communication. So I got to be honest, I'm really excited to see what comes out of this. We want to get these youth early, and we want to really get people from the community to understand policing and want to become a part of it.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of comments, if I may, after what you presented. Councilman Beer mentioned incentives for TPD or potential or possible future TPD officers to live in the city, because there are a lot of TPD officers that don't live in the city because they can't afford to live in the city, number one. And you did mention, engaging the community and going out to recruit to schools, so whatever it may be, to show people that are looking or thinking about their future, the benefits of being a police officer. You mentioned you'll make X amount of dollars per hour, you have full benefits and whatnot. And that's encouraging and good to know, because there are many students coming out of high school that they don't know what they're going to do. They go to college, they don't know what they're going to major in if they go to college. So I say to people all the time, and I said this the other day, college isn't for everybody. Learn a trade, talk to these union apprenticeships and whatnot, and go that route. Some people that's one option. Another option is look to the fire academy, look to the police academy, because it's an honorable profession and the benefits are there, and you will earn a decent wage, and whatnot. When people criticize politicians, and if I get criticized, which I have many times over the last 10 years, I say, then why don't you run for office? And I would encourage anybody to run for office. Put on the suit, file the paperwork, run for office. If there are people that are unhappy with the way the police department is going, I would encourage them. Why don't you be a police officer? Why don't you look at a career in law enforcement? That's the way to go. If you don't like the system, try to, I would say, infiltrate the system and bring about the positive change. And those are certainly things that we can do. And I appreciate your presentation because you broke down what you're doing, what TPD is doing in recruiting more people. We talk about the lack of diversity or the diversity numbers, that we need to go out into those communities and say, hey, you can be a part of this. You can be positive change. You can set a positive example and go from there. Thank you very much. Who is the
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Goode, go ahead.
I have a question for the lieutenant.
Yes, sir.
As it pertains to requirements, what is the requirement now? Is it still 1 year or 2 year college to be a part of the department?
Okay, so it's 60 credit hours or the equivalent, which would, or your AA degree or 60 credit hours, or we take military experience in lieu of that. And I'm actually glad you brought the education up, Councilman, because again, these committees I was sitting on and some of the groups, a lot of this comes up, and I feel like I don't know how much of it actually gets out of the room, but I think we're all on the same page with what we want. We want diversity. We want our department to mirror the community. But I think some of that gets lost in translation. So you brought up our education, and again, it is 2 years, which is your AA or equivalent of military experience. But we did a survey at one of the last community events I was at, and do you know what one of the top things as far as what the community wanted and change? One of the top things where they wanted us to have a bachelor's degree instead of an AA. And that truly baffled me because personally, I'm under the mindset that you don't have to have a bachelor's degree to be a good cop. I think you have to be relatable and understand. But, you know, that just goes to show there's a disconnect. You know, the community in that event I was at, we did a unanimous survey, and that was, I can't remember if it was number 1 or number 2, but they wanted us to have a bachelor's degree. So you have to think about that stuff. How is that now going to narrow, you know, our opportunity to grab more people overall? So right now,
I think it narrowed it years ago when we implemented that, because like I said, when Sandy Freeman hired most of us, I had some college, of course, but a lot of guys I came on with had no college, and they earned their degrees while working or obtaining money because most of them didn't have any money to go to college. I think that's some of the issue right now, that you don't have a lot of minorities able to go to college, to even go to ACC to get the 60 credit hours. So I think that's a problem in itself.
And
So
you
I
have to
think,
look too at, like, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilman.
I think that's something we need to look at, because other major departments around the country, they don't require that. So you don't want to digress for certain things, but I think that's something we may need to look at as well. I don't know what communities that you were talking about will have a bachelor's degree, but I know the ones that I know of, I will be hard found to see requiring a bachelor's degree. But I yield back to you, Lieutenant.
And I was just going to bring up, I'm sorry, very quickly, because I think it's very important, even for people who have applied in the past that may not be aware of it, and it speaks on the education. After you applied and had your AA degree or 60 credit hours, you still had to go take a TABE test, which is just like a high school equivalency test. But now, in looking at the numbers, you have to look at why you are not getting minorities. You can't just, assume what's happening. You have to actually look. And in looking, we realized that a lot of people were not A, passing the TABE test, or B, just not going to take it, period. So in bringing this to, Chief Dugan's attention, his question was, well, why are we doing a TABE test? You already have to have an AA degree or 60 credit hours. What benefit are we getting? Not only do you have to have transportation to get to the testing center, you have to pay a small fee to take the test, and then you have to make sure you pass it and turn in your results. So we felt like that alone was 2 or 3 different roadblocks just for people to be able to move forward in the process. So us now eliminating that TABE test moving forward, we're hoping to see some positive results from that alone.
Well, thank you, Lieutenant, because that was a roadblock. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, it was. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Who is next?
Oh, do you have more questions?
Councilmember
Felder has a question.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Lieutenant Hill, thank you. Thank you for your service. We're lucky to have you. Your enthusiasm is contagious even over the telephone, so we appreciate that.
Thanks.
I've heard that you've been at this position for a while. Probably been through a couple of chiefs, and at least this is probably your second or third mayor administration, I guess. But and as I pointed out earlier, and I'm sure that you are more than familiar with it, it looks like in terms of our minority numbers that we've plateaued over the last 10 years. And I appreciate the fact you guys are monitoring these numbers every month, and it's very informative to see these numbers. But in terms of the African American, we seem to have plateaued right around 12%. It goes up and down a point depending on what year, and Hispanics, I think something like 16%. And in contrast, the reflecting the community at large, minorities represent 50% of our community, 24% Black and 26% Hispanic within the city of Tampa. So we obviously have a ways to go, and I'm sure you agree with that, and you probably wrestle with it and have sleepless nights trying to do better. But my question is this: we know that this administration, Mayor Castor and her team, has only been in place for a year, and half of that year we've been fighting with COVID. So I'm understanding of that and the challenges that COVID has brought to us. When half of the city or a good portion of the city, gets stuck home and either in bed or quarantined or whatever. But my question is this: is your budget? As Councilman Vieira pointed out, a lot of times to make improvements, we have to fund and specifically target our funding very, very micro-targeted to make those improvements. And has your budget changed over the last year? We've gone through 2 budget cycles now. Has your budget changed specifically as related to minority hiring and minority recruiting? More staff, more incentives, that kind of thing. That's my first question, and then I have I think 1 or 2 others. But yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was going to say, I got to be honest, I have to take one question at a time. It's still early for me. The one that comes to mind as far as our budget increasing, so typically every year when I talked about the Police Recruit Scholarship Program, we hire 20 police recruits. This year, the chief approved 30. So this year we'll have 10 extra. And I wish I had the number with me, but I want to say for the scholarship class that starts in October, we're up to somewhere around, I want to say 79 to 81% affected class for this scholarship. And we're able to do that because of the 10 more additional positions we got from LETF, which is a law enforcement trust fund. So that's exciting. But if you talk to me about money, the chief will kill me, but I'll say, give my recruiters everything you can. But we totally understand what's going on right now, the situation and how tough it is with the budget. So I think that's why, Officer Gardner came up with, what can we do if we don't have the money? And going out into these schools and working with the criminology programs and monitoring these kids, and even our social media, our recruiting team, that type of stuff doesn't cost money, and it makes a real difference. No matter what, getting out in the community, even if it's one person at a time that we bring in, that's a ripple effect. That one person's going to tell one of their friends or parents, who's going to tell their friends, and that's